and welcome back to my vlog, the penultimate part of what you can do with your willpower, the middle section of chapter 4. 40 years ago, there was on the lips of nearly every teacher and father a fascinating story of a Massachusetts boy whose history illustrates forcibly the power to will, which is latent in us all. I need not state the details of the life, as it is only the illustration which we need here. A young fellow sat on a barrel at the door of a country grocery store in a small village not far from Boston. He was the son of an industrious mechanic who had opened a small shop for making and repairing farm utensils, such as rakes, hoes, and shovels. But the son, encouraged by an indulgent mother, would not work. He gave way to cards, drink, and bad company. He would not go to school and was a continual source of alarm to his parents, and he became the talk of the neighbors. He either was ill with a cough or pretended to fear consumption. The doctor's advice to set him at work in the open air was not enforced by his anxious mother. He was a fair sample of the many thousand young men seen now about the country stores and taverns. He had, however, the unusual disadvantage of having his board and clothing furnished to him without earning them. If he exercised his will, it was to turn it against himself in a determined self-indulgence. I heard him once refer to those days and quote Virgil in saying that the descent to Avernus is easy. One evening, with his hands in his pockets, he strolled up to the store and post office to meet some other young men for a game of checkers. Under the only street lamp near the store, a patent medicine peddler had opened one side of his covered wagon and was advertising his universal cure. The boy, then about 19 years old, listened listlessly to the songs and stories, but was not interested enough to learn what was offered for sale. The vendor of medicines held up a chain composed of several seemingly solid rings, which he skillfully took apart. He then offered $1 to any one who would put the rings together as they were before. The puzzle caught the eye and interest of the careless boy. As the rings were passed from one to another, they came to him. He looked them over and said, "I can't do it," and passed them on. The Yankee peddler yelled at the boy, "If you talk like that, you will land in the poorhouse." The young fellow was cut to the heart with the short rebuke. He was inclined to answer hotly, but lacked the courage. After the other boys had had their chance to see the rings, he asked to examine them again. But he still saw no way to cut or open the solid steel, and contemptuously threw them at the peddler and shouted, "You're fooling! That can't be done!" The smiling vendor rolled the rings into a chain in an instant and, throwing it to the boy, said sarcastically, "Take it home to your mother. She can do it." The young fellow, ashamed, angry, and crushed, caught the chain and crept out of the crowd and went home, entering his room by the back stairs. He hated the peddler with a murderous passion, but despised himself and must have wept great tears far into the night. The next morning he sat on the side of his bed gazing at the chain long after his father had gone to work. That was a terrible battle. All who succeed must fight that battle to victory at some time, or life is a failure. He who conquers himself can conquer other men. He who does not rule himself cannot control other people. For the first time, that boy was conscious of his lack of will. He was painfully ashamed. He could not, again, meet the boys or the one girl who was at the post office unless he solved that riddle. It was far worse to him than the riddles of the ancient oracles or the questions of Samson had been to the ancients. No victory so glorious to any man as that when he rises over his dead self and can shout with unwavering confidence, "I will." That young man's battle was furious and a strain on body and soul. He kept saying over and over again, "I will solve that riddle." He was sorely tempted by hunger as he would not stop to eat. He determined to win out alone, and did not ask aid even of his mother. That night the rings fell apart in his hands and rolled on the floor. He had won! Life has few joys like that hour of victory. The rings had little value as pieces of steel, but his triumph over self was worth millions to him, and worth 1,000 millions to his country. The next morning his parents were surprised to see him the first one at the breakfast table. He told of his solution of the puzzle and said to his astonished but delighted parents that he had loafed around long enough and that he had determined to take hold and do things. He asked for an especially hard place at the shop and entered that week on a noble, triumphant career, having few equals save those of like experience. His health became robust, his work became profitable, new business ideas were developed, and in a few years he controlled the inside business and far distanced all outside competitors. He said to his wife, "I will have $1 million, and every dollar shall be a clean and honest dollar." In those days, $1 million looked like a mountain of gold. But he secured the $1 million and steadily raised the pay of his workmen. He became the sheik of the town, the father and advisor of every local enterprise. He was sent to Congress by a nearly unanimous vote. For 11 years, he was a safe counselor of the administration at Washington and was a close friend and trusted supporter of President Lincoln. That's where we'll stop. More tomorrow as we wrap this up. Make it a great day and use your willpower. And bye for now.